So, I would like to share a little bit about what is happening this month, June. It feels like there's always so much to share in terms of the astrological influences because it's always changing and giving us new lessons and opportunities, particularly if you're on a yogic path. Then the Jyotisha, the influences of the sort of heavenly sky realms is something to definitely pay attention to because it gives us insight and support to understand how to best use our time, how to apply our divine free will in ways in which we can kind of extract the best nectar out of each time frame. So let's talk about what is the nectar to extract from the month of June, particularly the first 3 weeks of June. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit of what happened near the end of May, because that really set the stage for what's happening now and for the next several weeks. All right. So near the end of May, right around May 24th, 25th, we had what is called a Gandanta. And Gandanta is when a graha, which we can loosely call planet, but it's much more than that, shifts from a watery position to a fiery position. And this was a very big shift because Venus moved from the watery Pisces into the fiery Aries. And that's not just a shift from water to fire, it's also a shift from the end of the zodiac, the end of a cycle, to the beginning of the zodiac, the beginning of a new cycle. This shift from water to fire is considered a time of unraveling karmic knots. It is an opportunity to loosen strong, tightly bound karmic patterns that are ready to release, to transform, to loosen up. And so, right around May 24th, 25th, we had this several day period where karmic knots could be loosened up. We could let go of tight tensions that are around certain issues. And that would vary depending on your horoscope. For my family, it was influencing our home life. And actually, right in that time frame, we were moving out of the home that we've been living in for 3 months and starting a kind of a road trip adventure as a family. Okay, so something loosening up, and you knowing that can kind of go along for the ride with it and help the process along. So that happened near the end of May. And then around May 30th, we had a new moon. And this particular new moon also helps us to kind of clear the way. That new moon was a new moon that had to do with passion and intimacy, and even we could say sexuality and desire. And that's going to link up with what I'm going to talk about for the month of June. Okay. So, what we have now in June is that Venus is fully in Aries, that fiery realm ruled by Mars, that has a lot of intensity and passion and hard-headedness, we could even say, kind of rushing into things head first is what Aries tends to do. And we have Venus there till around the 17th, 18th of June. So what does this mean? Venus is known for being more kind of soft, feminine in nature, all about comforts and beauty and pleasure, and often is associated with relaxation, with gentleness. But it's in the location that's ruled by Mars, this fiery place that has to do with friction and heat and transformation and intense, passionate desire and rushing into things head first. Okay. And so, what that does is it can create a lot of dynamism. Now, we're not going to get the total blissful, easeful comfort that we think of when we think of Venus. It's not going to be that kind of a time frame. But what we do get is this incredible opportunity for transformation and for a kind of a dynamic, positive change if we take it in the right way. So if we don't take it in the right way, if we let ourselves sort of just be dragged around moment to moment without being more conscious and conscientious and caring about ourselves and our environment and our choices, then this can be a time of very intense passion and rushing into things and friction. And we might even see that in particularly our most intimate relationships. Okay. But if we take it in the right way, there's a tantrika opportunity right now. And so, what do I mean by that? Let me bring in one more graha. The additional graha to bring in here is Rahu. And I've talked about Rahu many times. We are living in a Rahuvian time. Rahu is the head of the serpent of the sky. And we are in a Rahuvian time on the globe right now. And we're just coming out of an eclipse season of April, which actually influences the next 6 months. So I'm going to talk about Rahu and then pull that serpent into this conversation about Venus in Aries, because Rahu is right there as well. So this is a very unique combination. We have the watery, blissful, feminine, soft, comfortable Venus in the intense, fiery, passionate, head first Aries. And there with that combination is Rahu. So Rahu has to do with illusion, passion, exaggeration, suddenness, surprises, transformation that is uncomfortable, unexpected, unplanned, and sometimes undesirable. You know, you have probably undergone some periods of transformation in your life that weren't what you wanted at the time. And so that's what Rahu does. Rahu can, like a serpent, kind of pull you into places that you didn't plan, expect, want, and can thrust you into chasing down desires with excessive amounts of passion with kind of no end in sight. It's a tricky planet. It takes on, it's really a shadow planet. So it takes on disguises and takes you to shadowy, unknowable, unclear places. There can be a lot of confusion and anxiety when we're under the influence of Rahu. But Rahu can also expand things in very unusual, unique, exotic, unexpected, mysterious ways. And that's what we want to get out of. That's the nectar that we want to pull out of the influence of Rahu right now. Can we, rather than be dragged around by intense passions that kind of lead nowhere, can we take the reins, be involved in our lives, and take the opportunity toward a kind of interesting, unique expansion and transformation that takes your soul forward in its journey as a seeker, as a human being. So we have Venus, soft, gentle, connected with the feminine divine, in Aries, fiery, all about transformation, purification, forging ahead, and influenced by Rahu, the sacred celestial serpent, who, if taken in the right way, opens the doorway to things like Tantra. All right. And all of this is happening as well with Venus for part of the time in Ashwini. Ashwini is a nakshatra. It is a star constellation that is all about miraculous healing, rejuvenation, alternative, holistic healing, mysterious medicine, and medicine that is traditional, ancient, and subtle. Okay, that's Ashwini. So these are all the influences right now. What does this mean? Okay, it means it might be an uncomfortable time. It might be a time when you can get sucked into illusory thinking, pulled into imagery, other people's lives and circumstances, wanting what you don't have, wanting what someone else has. Okay. But it can also be a time when you can make a positive shift towards a desire that is deeper, a desire for your own innermost self, a hunger and a passion toward the deepest kind of seeking, and the kind of seeking that takes the current circumstance and does a sort of alchemy that is magical, mysterious, and healing, that disrupts the status quo. That is what can happen right now if we take it in the right way. Disruption of the status quo. And yes, that can mean societally, but it also means internally for you as an individual, which impacts the world. Okay. Disruption of the status quo is never super comfortable. It means you have to change. It means you have to do things a little differently. It means you have to be open to inner realms that are subtle and mysterious and transformational. It means you have to let go of things that worked in the past so that you could survive, but aren't really helping you move forward and inward. All right. And so this is a time to do something different. This is a time to be open to releasing the karmic knots that have bound you in the past up to this point, and to kind of ride the serpent, so to speak, all right, towards resolution. It's a great time for breakthrough. And this is really what Tantra is all about. And I'm talking about traditional yoga Tantra. This is the practice of transmuting your current circumstance through yogic practice, yogic knowledge, yogic insight into that which is positive, beneficial for your soul's journey toward itself. Okay. And so, it is in this time that I happen to be releasing a very special series inside the Shri Studio. And I want to just tell you a little bit about that if you're interested. Um, and this will give you the opportunity to be guided through this time rather than to be misguided by desire, by what's happening around you, by past binding karmas, rather than to get caught up in the confusion and conflict and controversy that is going to be of this month, to transmute, transform. Okay. So I'm releasing inside my Shri Studio, which is my online practice realm, okay, the subtle sacred spine practices. And so this was an 8-week series that I taught a year ago, and I'm going to re-release at least half of the series. We'll see if we get through the whole series or if we take that at another time. And this is a series in which we go directly, gently, softly, that's the Venus, okay, into the subtle realm. That's the Rahu. That's the subtle realm of the spine, okay, the Sushumna Nadi, the Kundalini Shakti, the chakras that are along the spine. We do a pilgrimage in that realm, okay, directly with gentle practices for the sake of purification. That's the Aries, okay, transformation and nutrification as well. It's a very blissful series with practices that are accessible and deep, practices that go inward. That's what I mean by deep, not extreme, but deeply inward. and all threaded with contemplative teachings from the yoga tradition about the subtle realm, the chakras, the Kundalini Shakti, the Sushumna Nadi, the Ha and Ta, Ida Pingala Nadis, and so on. So that's my way of sharing something with you during this time that could either be volatile, all right, at its worst, but can be highly transformational and healing in very mystical and magical ways if taken in the right way. So that is what's happening in June. It's a little bit. There's more happening in June, but this is the piece that I wanted to focus on right now to share with you. And let me see, I had written a couple things down. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to share. Yeah, it's really just a wonderful opportunity to go into a different dimension. Okay. And that here I'm talking about an inner dimension, but that will change the outer dimension. Okay. And in particular, when we're talking about Venus, which is sort of the hub of this little Tea and Jyotisha, when we're talking about Venus, the dimension we're talking about is the dimension of your home, because Venus rules the home. And we're also talking about the dimension of your most intimate relationships in your life, particularly romantic relationships, sexual relationships, partnerships that are life partnerships. Venus rules those kinds of relationships and your home. But as a yogic practitioner, you can also think of your body and your subtle body and your mind as your home. And you can think about the relationship with your innermost self as your most intimate relationship. And so while we take action and also witness the possible changes of home life, domestic life, romantic life, partnership, sexual partnership, all of that at this time, we can also participate in the most sacred relationship with this home, the home of your body, mind, and subtle body, and the relationship with yourself. And that's what we do as yoga practitioners at a time like this. And that is what Tantra specializes in. So that's what we'll be doing in the Shri Studio. It's open to all. The practices that I share are accessible and advanced. Okay. So these are practices for true yogic seekers. And that's what I mean by advanced. You're here practicing yoga for the right reasons, but accessible to all bodies and experience levels in terms of the physical. All right. And I will stick around here to see if there are any questions about this time astrologically. Any recommendations for Ayurvedic practices during this time? That's a great question. Yes, this is a really, so every time is a good time for vata pacification. I would say there's really nothing people need more in general at all times than vata pacification, but especially when we're under the influence of Rahu. Rahu can really make you go berserk in terms of vata. So what does that mean? It means oils and fats on the inside and the outside, and it means routines, and it means getting good sleep. Make sleep and routine your top priority. This is the simple stuff that is hard for people to accomplish, but it is also simple. Eat regular meals at regular times and go to sleep. Give yourself that 8-hour window for deep sleep. That's number one. The other thing is, I would say this is a very good time in general, Ayurvedically speaking, for the practices that have to do with the body. So skin brushing, dry brushing, which is that friction and heat and purification that Aries is calling us to do, but also abhyanga, oil massage. You can do that for yourself, or you can go and have someone do that for you, but daily self abhyanga, oil on the body, oil on your face, really treating yourself, regardless of gender, treating yourself like a goddess, like the goddess treating the goddess, okay? With love, with nurturance, with oils, because that is very connected to Venus, which is all about that comfort and juiciness and softness and beauty and the wateriness that is the oil. It's all about love and intimacy. So you do that, you kind of love yourself and engage in that intimate relationship with yourself through oil massage of the body. And that will also help with the vata pacification. So I would say, if I was to pick one special practice for you to do Ayurvedically right now, it would be self oil massage daily. It's a great question. There was a comment here about greediness that was possibly related to what I was saying about Rahu, or maybe Aries. Yeah, this could be a time of intense wanting and feeling like it's never enough, never enough, never enough. And that's both the fire of Aries and the intense kind of seeking, desire, fulfillment that Rahu can invoke. And that can look a lot like greed or manifest as greed. And so, what we can do with that, notice what the greed is about. It's about a feeling dissatisfied. It's about an intense desire that comes from never feeling satisfied. And so then we take a good long pause and think about, is there anything on the outside of you that will ever satisfy you fully and completely? The answer is no, of course. The one thing that will satisfy you permanently is Shreyas, is your own innermost deep sense of satisfaction. That's what you're really seeking. And so when you can notice that what's happening is you're seeking happiness, you're seeking satisfaction, then you turn that seeking inward into yogic seeking, into being a mumukshu, a yogic seeker, into being a sadhaka, a yoga practitioner. And you go within to discover the thing that is the most satisfying, which is the recognition of the self of yourself. That is consciousness itself, and nothing is outside of it. So you have everything already. So there's no greed, there's no feeling of lack when you are able to contact that truth of your being and contact it again and again and again until that becomes your natural awareness. That becomes your home. Yes. So there's a question here about Shani, about the great Saturn who is about to be going retrograde. And that's going to happen in a little while. I'm going to do a separate Tea and Jyotisha on that. But Saturn, yes, we have really been under the influence of a lot of Saturn in general across the globe, as well as Rahu at this time. And Saturn going retrograde. And what is retrograde in general? I'll do another Tea and Jyotisha in a couple of weeks as that gets closer. How does one know their balance or their place between inner status quo disruption and systemic disruption during this time? For some, it's both rather than either or. For all of us, it's both. Okay. So I'm not, sometimes I don't fully understand questions. We're in this kind of two-dimensional realm where I'm reading the text. So the yogic journey is one that makes the inner seeking and the inner disruption of status quo primary. But it's not counter to the disruption of the outer status quo, because from the yogic viewpoint, there is not a separation between the inner world and the outer world, in fact. And the thing that you can have the most direct influence on as an individual is yourself, what motivates your actions, where you live within yourself, moment to moment. When that status quo is disrupted, in other words, if you go from living in a state of hypervigilance, anxiety, and anger to a state of peace, inner satisfaction, and availability, that dramatically influences how you are in the world. So that when you take action to disrupt the status quo in your life, in your relationships, in your community, whatever your role is in terms of your individual, your swadharma, okay? When you shift how you're living within, that dramatically shifts everything that you engage with on the outside. And it shifts it not just in how you act, the actions you take, the choices you make, the influence you have over others and over the world and what needs to be changed on the outside and so on. It influences it in very subtle ways. Because you'll find that when you are living from a place of peace and openness and availability, the world, the neighborhood, the community, others, environments are more open and responsive to you, which makes change possible. And you are more available to be a contributor without being driven by dissatisfaction, being driven by anger, being driven by wounds. All of these things have their place, but when they're your driving force, you're not very effective in terms of the work that you're here to do in the world. So I hope that helps with that. You take inner realm first, at least for a little bit of time each day, until ultimately you're always abiding in that inner realm, no matter how active you are on the outside. You are in yourself, okay? You take time for that. You make that your priority. And that will make you a better contributor to the world, your family, your neighborhood, your community, and the globe, depending on your individual dharma in that regard. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. It is really a time when you get to make a conscious choice, especially as Mercury is going to go direct in a couple of days. It's been retrograde for some time, which is kind of calling us to reflect and go back and revisit things of the past. Now, as Mercury goes direct right around June 3rd, 4th, we get to step forward. We get to make proactive choices. And very specifically, we get to make the choice toward Tantra. That's all about transformation, transmuting the current to what's possible, disrupting the status quo, touching the inner realms, going into sacred subtle realms, and letting that influence everything else. So it really is a very special time, I think. Uncomfortable, perhaps, but sacred, and a really good time for mystical medicine. Okay. Alrighty. I'll check one more time for questions and then we'll say goodbye for now until the next Tea and Jyotisha. And I hear a little bell out there. That's my cue. All right. Many blessings. Have a beautiful day wherever you are. Cheers.